Baek Yuseol wakes up in a cold, dark room, not knowing where he is. His eyes snap open as he tries to make sense of the situation. A sharp pain hits his head, and he grabs his face with a groan. He sits alone on the floor, shivering while his breath fogs up in the air. He found himself sucked directly into the world of Aether World. Not as a hero or a powerful mage, but possessing the body of Baek Yuseol, a student with the most pathetic stats in history. He catches a glimpse of himself in a broken mirror and stops cold. Suddenly, a familiar blue light flickers in front of him. A system window pops into existence, announcing the start of something new. He leans against the wall, trying to stay calm as his mind races. Things start to click. This place matches the game's opening perfectly. He peeks through the cracks in the wooden wall to see what's outside. A group of cloaked figures is marching through the snow, and they don't look friendly. He stays low, watching them closely from the dark. Outside, the men spot the small hut and start closing in. Baek Yuseol stands up, knowing he can't stay hidden for long. He clenches his fist as the gravity of the situation sets in. Another system chime rings out in the quiet room. He realizes that even though his stats are trash, he still has one skill available. It's Blink, the short-range teleport spell he's used millions of times in the game. The window confirms it's ready to use, showing him exactly how to flash forward. The cloaked men break into a sprint, heading straight for his door. He's not going to sit around and wait to be caught. He bursts out the back and takes off as they shout that they've found him. The tutorial officially begins, and now it's a race for survival. He charges through the deep snow, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Despite the exhaustion, his gaze is fixed forward. A dark, shadowy hand reaches out from behind a tree to grab him. One of the pursuers swings a sword at his neck, screaming for him to die. Baek Yuseol's eyes glow with a sharp, golden light. In a flash of light, he teleports past the blade and keeps moving. He doesn't look back, using his momentum to gain ground. He narrows his eyes, focusing entirely on the path ahead. A confident smirk plays on his lips as he realizes his muscle memory is still there. The man behind him shouts in frustration, unable to keep up with the sudden teleport. Baek Yuseol continues his sprint, weaving through the frozen trees. He leaps across the snowy landscape, putting distance between him and the cultists. More figures appear in the distance, determined to bring him down. A new system prompt tells him to dodge the magic arrows flying his way. A massive purple blast of magic erupts right where he was standing a second ago. He skids to a halt on the edge of a snowy cliff. Below him is a massive, dark canyon with no easy way across. The final part of the tutorial appears. He has to cross the entire gap using Blink. Baek Yuseol stands on the edge of the snowy cliff, looking out at the expanse. 3 cloaked men corner him, blocking his path back. He drops into a low crouch, preparing himself for the fight. He peeks from behind a tree, keeping his eyes on their movements. The pursuers start to close the distance, their heavy boots crunching in the snow. He draws his blade as the 3 men move in to surround him. The leader of the group snarls, clearly losing his patience. A spear lunges toward him, but he shifts just in time to avoid the strike. His eyes flare with a golden light as he prepares to activate Blink. One of the men looks stunned, unable to track his movement. Baek Yuseol gets in close, bypassing their long-range weapons. He lands a heavy blow, leaving his attacker gasping for air. Blood splatters across his face, but he doesn't even flinch. He drives his knife into the side of the first cloaked man. With a powerful kick, he sends another pursuer tumbling into the snow. One of the men groans in pain as he's knocked back by the sudden force. The group realizes he's slipping through their fingers as he breaks into a run. He leaps across the icy terrain, his breath visible in the freezing air. He looks back over his shoulder, but the cultists aren't backing down. 2 of the men begin to channel fire magic, the snow melting around them. A massive magic circle forms in the air, glowing with an intense heat. One of the mages is caught in his own recoil as the spell goes off. Fireballs rain down on the path, forcing Baek Yuseol to move even faster. He grits his teeth, pushing his body past its limits to dodge the flames. He activates Blink once more, vanishing just as a blast hits his position. The cultist looks around in confusion, wondering where he went. Baek Yuseol appears directly behind him, knife ready for the killing blow. He slashes through the man in one smooth, practiced motion. He stands over the fallen enemy, the wind howling around him. He takes a moment to catch his breath, his chest heaving from the effort. More pursuers arrive, drawing their swords as they approach. Despite the blood on his shirt, his resolve doesn't waver for a second. The remaining cultists look on with a mix of anger and growing fear. He holds his knife tight, waiting for the right moment to strike again. He lunges forward, catching them off guard with his speed. One man swings a glowing blue blade, nearly catching him in the chest. The leader shouts out an incantation for a powerful ice wave. Jagged shards of ice erupt from the ground, surging toward him. A massive explosion of frost covers the area as the attack connects. Baek Yuseol stands firm, his clothes torn but his spirit unbroken. The leader's face twists with rage at seeing him still standing. He raises his sword high, ready to end this once and for all. Baek Yuseol lunges forward, his movements a blur in the snowy air. He swings his blade with lethal precision, cutting through the enemy's defense. A powerful clash sends shockwaves across the cliffside. The cultist leader tries to block, his eyes widening in realization. With a single, decisive thrust, Baek Yuseol ends the struggle. He collapses into the snow, the adrenaline fading as the reality of the fight sinks in. His hands are stained with blood, and his blade reflects the grim outcome. He stares at the ground, his expression unreadable behind the splatters of gore. The quiet of the mountains returns, leaving only the bodies and the falling snow. This was his first real battle, and the first time he had to use blink for survival. It was also the first time he had taken a life, a weight that settles heavily on him. He grits his teeth, forcing himself to move past the shock. He stands up slowly, the cold wind whipping through his torn clothes. He begins to search the fallen men, looking for anything useful. Inside a dark pouch, he finds a handful of glimmering gold coins. He weighs the bag in his hand, a small consolation for the ordeal he just endured. Looking out over the ridge, he notices something moving in the distance. A small group of travelers and a carriage are being approached by cloaked figures. The newcomers look like another group of mages, and they don't seem friendly. Baek Yuseol doesn't hesitate, throwing himself off the ledge to reach them. He activates his mana, a golden aura surrounding him as he descends. Among the travelers is Aether World, a girl with long, pale blue hair who looks on in fear. He hits the ground running, using the momentum of his fall to propel himself forward. One of the attackers spots him, letting out a cry of surprise. A mage begins to channel fire magic, a flaming ring forming around his hands. The air crackles with energy as a complex magic circle appears on the snow. Baek Yuseol leaps through the air, ignoring the warnings shouted from the carriage. He crashes into the center of the conflict, the impact kicking up a cloud of frost. He narrows his eyes, focusing on the nearest threat. The mages are caught off guard by his sudden and violent entrance. He tracks their movements, his senses heightened by the previous fight. A blast of purple magic is fired, but he's already moving to avoid it. He stands his ground, a lone figure shielding the travelers from the mages. His breathing is steady now, his mind focused entirely on the combat ahead. He dives beneath a high swing, closing the distance in an instant. His face is a mask of cold determination as he prepares to strike. He moves like a shadow, weaving through the chaotic bursts of magic. He is diving down towards the lead attacker with his blade held tight. He skids across the ice, his hands braced against the ground for balance. A massive explosion of fire erupts behind him, lighting up the sky. The collision of magic and steel creates a blinding flash of light. Shards of blue mana fall like rain as the spells begin to unravel. Baek Yuseol braces himself against the side of a massive rock, his brown coat billowing in the mountain wind. He narrows his gold-brown eyes, his face set in a look of intense concentration as he assesses the scene. Aether Wolf stands before him in the snow, her long pale blue hair caught in the breeze as she grips her staff. Hanging from the edge of the cliff, he looks down at the carriage and the small figures gathered on the frozen plains below. He drops into the snow, landing right in front of Aether and her group of hooded travelers. A bead of sweat rolls down his face as he meets the girl's curious gaze, the silence between them heavy. Without a word, he turns and begins to walk away, leaving the group behind with a confused farewell. His mind drifts back to the brutal fight, his gaze hardening as he reflects on the enemies he just faced. The dark silhouettes of the demon cult dance in his memory, framed by a wall of roaring fire. He knows the dark demon cult is behind most of the chaos in this world, a constant and invisible threat. A sudden chime rings out, and a distorted blue system screen glitches into existence before his eyes. He pauses to read the floating window, his expression growing serious as the game-like interface displays new data. A lone carriage makes its way through the frozen mountains under the night sky. Inside, Baek Yuseol looks like he's seen better days, covered in sweat and grime. His mind drifts back to a time when things were simpler, calling out for his mom with a big smile. She was always there, greeting him with a warm look that made everything okay. Back then, her hands were usually holding out a new book for him to dive into. Young Baek spent most of his childhood tucked away in the library, lost in different worlds. He'd often fall asleep mid-sentence, and she'd be there to drape a blanket over his shoulders. But that warmth vanished when a stern man in a suit showed up, leaving his mother trembling. Baek could only stand there and watch as his world started to crumble. It ended with him alone in the rain, crying his eyes out with nowhere to go. A sharp memory of the past jolts him back to the cold reality of the present. He winces, clutching his head as a dull ache pulses through his skull. A guy with messy pink hair leans in, asking if he's doing alright. The carriage wheels keep grinding against the thick snow, lurching forward. They eventually come to a halt, and Baek steps out into the biting wind with the other travelers. He lets out a long breath, stretching his stiff arms after the cramped ride. Nearby, a girl with pale blue hair and a hooded cloak stands silently. This is Aether Wolf, and she looks like she's carrying the weight of the world. Baek catches her eye for a split second and wonders what her deal is. She doesn't stick around, turning her back and vanishing into the white fog. In the civilized parts of this world, people use flying ships and warp gates to get around instantly. But out here on the edges, you're stuck doing things the old-fashioned way. He's finally made it to the gates of Stella Academy, the top school for the magically gifted. A blue system window flickers to life, confirming his diagnosis, mana leakage syndrome. Baek stares at the floating text, knowing this trash status is going to be a problem. He looks down, his expression grim as he reads through his stats. Everything is bottom tier, with barely a single star in any category and no mana capacity to speak of. The screen fades away, leaving him standing alone in the vast, empty snowscape. Soon, a massive flying ship looms overhead as he nears the Academy's main hub. He walks through the grand halls, looking around at the opulence of the place. His path is blocked by 3 guys in expensive suits who look like they own the place. Baek isn't in the mood for a confrontation, so he just sighs and tries to sidestep them. The leader snaps, offended that a commoner like him would dare to sigh in their presence. He glares at Baek's back, his face twisting with irritation. Baek stops and glances back, not looking intimidated at all. Suddenly, the crowd parts for a girl with long silver hair and sharp red eyes. This is Hong Bayin, and she radiates authority. The atmosphere shifts instantly as she walks past, ignoring the arrogant trio completely. She shoots a cold, piercing look at Baek as she passes him. Without a word, she continues up the stairs, her heels clicking against the floor. Baek watches her go, sensing the heavy aura she carries. He recognizes her from the game's lore, standing beside a quiet, short-haired girl. A dark thought crosses his mind. In some versions of the story, she meets a brutal end. As she stands alone in the room, Baek realizes he's the only one who knows what's coming. Hong Bayin hides her face, looking like she's about to break down. Baek Yuseol watches her from a distance, feeling a strange mix of pity and detachment. He knows her fate, but for now, he just turns and walks away down the long corridor. Back in his own space, he clutches a cup tightly, the stress of this new world finally hitting him. He steps into a grand room within the academy, looking absolutely exhausted. Across the hall, Hong Bayin stares out at the campus, her expression uncharacteristically somber. In a corner, the top-tier student Ma Yuxiang sits alone, looking like a king on a throne. Baek clenches his jaw, reminding himself that he's here to survive, not just play a game. He narrows his eyes, his gaze sharp and full of determination. A massive, purple-eyed dragon screams in the background of his mind, a reminder of the chaos to come. He pulls up a glowing system window to see if there's anything he missed in his stats. Suddenly, a pair of thin-framed glasses appears in his hand with a soft glow. He examines the new gear, wondering how it managed to follow him into this reality. The holographic screen identifies them as bulbul glasses, a rare item from the game. As soon as he puts them on, his vision sharpens as the world is overlaid with data. He walks through the halls with his head down, trying to keep a low profile. Aether Wolf walks past him, her arms wrapped tightly around a heavy textbook. He pauses to watch her go, thinking about the role she's supposed to play in this story. He recalls that the Aether World game was actually based on a romance novel called Don't Love the Princess. In that original story, the silver-haired girl and her love interests were the center of everything. The sun shines brightly over the massive campus of Stella Academy. A crowd of students in pristine blue uniforms gathers for the opening ceremony. The academy's headmaster addresses the new class with a welcoming speech. Baek stands tall among the other students, his new uniform fitting him perfectly. The noble students, led by Hong Bayin, make their way up the grand staircase. Everyone's attention is on Ma Yuxiang, the undisputed genius of their generation. He carries himself with an almost divine arrogance, like someone who knows he's untouchable. The elite students take their place on the podium as the ceremony reaches its peak. The hall is filled with the sound of students clapping as the new semester is officially inaugurated. The massive stone walls of the academy stand as a symbol of power and tradition. After the ceremony, the students are ushered into a lecture hall for their first assignment. Each of them is given a shimmering gold pocket watch with the academy's emblem. It's a badge of honor, proving they've earned a place at the world's most prestigious magic school. Baek settles into his seat, waiting for the first lecture to begin. The mood shifts instantly when the instructor announces a surprise class placement exam. One student nearby breaks into a cold sweat, already overwhelmed by the difficulty. This isn't just any test, it's a notorious filter designed to break the weak. Even a prodigy like Hong Bayin focuses intently on her paper, not taking any chances. Meanwhile, Ma Yuxiang just lounges in his chair, looking like he couldn't care less. Baek looks down at the complex problems, his expression remaining perfectly neutral. His confidence flares up as he puts on his glasses and sees through the patterns of the questions. He rests his chin on his hand, looking like a pro gamer about to clear a low-level dungeon. The instructor looms over Baek Yuseol, his presence heavy and intimidating. Baek reaches for the special glasses, his hands slightly trembling with anticipation. The instructor watches closely as the young man handles the mysterious artifact. Beads of sweat roll down Baek's face as he feels the weight of the moment. Ah, yes. He mutters, nervously accepting the glasses from the professor. He slides them onto his face, and his vision immediately begins to change. The test paper before him suddenly makes perfect sense, glowing with arcane clarity. He begins to write with a speed and confidence that shocks those around him. The instructor crosses his arms, his stern expression softening into one of pure amazement. With a flourish, Baek submits his completed paper, which radiates a brilliant blue aura. The professor stands in the center of the hall, surrounded by the swirling energy of the submitted exams. Baek pushes up his glasses, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips. He leaves the testing hall, walking through the massive doors of the academy. Later, he meets with an elderly professor who examines the glasses with great interest. The faculty members discuss Baek's incredible performance, still in disbelief. The older man claps a hand on Baek's shoulder, offering a warm and genuine smile. Baek beams back at him, the tension of the exam finally melting away. The sun sets over the grand spires of Stella Academy, marking the end of a momentous day. Back in the faculty lounge, the instructors continue to pore over the test results. The instructor in the gray coat can't seem to take his eyes off one particular paper. He shows it to Professor Edeltaman, who looks just as intrigued as he is. Professor Edeltaman, a member of the Council of Elders, can't help but chuckle at the discovery. They compare his work to the top talents, like Hong Bayin, the genius from a legendary fire mage family. Even the crown prince of the Scalvan Empire, chosen for his peerless magical prowess, is mentioned, and the young master from the Full Moon Tower, whose name carries weight throughout the magical world. The instructor narrows his eyes, realizing he's looking at something unprecedented. The exam was designed to be nearly impossible, with most students unable to get a single answer right. While Hong Bayin remains an elite, her perfection is now being challenged by an outsider. The name written in bold at the top of the most impressive paper is Baek Yuseol. The professors realize they've found a diamond in the rough, a student unlike any they've seen before. They review his file, noting that his rare ability to control blink was the only reason he was admitted. The next morning, students crowd around the bulletin boards to find their class assignments. The results are posted for all to see, categorizing students by their potential and performance. Baek scans the boards, looking for his name among the common ranks. He checks the lists for Class F and beyond, but his name is nowhere to be found. "My name's not here," he mutters, a look of pure confusion and dread crossing his face. Other students walk past him, their indifference making his isolation feel even deeper. He stands amidst the crowd, his mind racing as he wonders if there was a mistake. Suddenly, his breath catches as he notices a special list on a separate, glowing display. There, isolated at the very top, is the entry, S0 Baek Yuseol. He stares at it, wide-eyed, as the purple light of the display reflects in his stunned gaze. He hasn't just passed, he's been placed in Class S, the rank reserved for the absolute peak of talent. Baek Yuseol's eyes narrow in shock, a single bead of sweat trickling down as the reality of his placement sinks in. He quickly composes himself and begins to walk away, ignoring the finger-pointing and whispers of the other students. With a calm, measured pace, he moves through the corridor, his mind already planning his next move in this high-stakes game. Watching him from the sidelines, Aether Wolf remains silent, her expression unreadable as she observes the boy who just achieved the impossible. Stella Academy, the most prestigious magic school in the world. A sharp slap rings through the quiet hallway. Professor Hong Yil screams at her student, her face contorted with rage. Hong Bayin collapses onto the floor, trembling. She stares down at the wooden boards as tears start to fall. The professor stands over her, looking down with pure disgust. She grabs Bayin's face, forcing her to look her in the eye. Bayin doesn't fight back, her spirit completely broken. She stays huddled there long after the professor walks away. Inside the academy, the elite S-class is just starting their day. The room is filled with the low hum of teenagers gossiping. Baek Yuseol sits at his desk, looking like he's about to pass out from a migraine. A student nearby whispers about him, wondering how a commoner got in. Yuseol lets out a long groan and stretches his arms. He scans the room, checking out the different students he recognizes from the game. A girl looks over her shoulder, curious about the newcomer. The instructor steps up to the podium and calls the class to order. Two girls sit in the front row, already focused on their textbooks. Suddenly, the classroom door creaks open. Hong Bayin walks in, her head held high like nothing happened. She looks cold and untouchable, the perfect image of a noble genius. She stops right in front of the instructor's desk. Yuseol pushes his glasses up, activating his player interface. A window pops up, revealing Bayin's inevitable fate. She's a villainess destined to die. She looks back toward the seats, her expression unreadable. Yuseol quickly looks away, pretending to be busy with his notes. But she's already staring right at him. Her red eyes lock onto his for a long, uncomfortable moment. She scoffs and moves past him to find a seat. Yuseol just gives a tiny, knowing smirk to himself. Later, the training session begins, and magic circles fill the hall. A student focuses their mana, a glowing staff forming in their grip. The instructor watches from a distance, evaluating their performance. He waves his hand, summoning the next group of students to the floor. Yuseol stands among the geniuses, looking bored out of his mind. A hooded figure summons a massive pillar of light that illuminates the entire hall. Yuseol steps onto the training field, ignoring the quiet whispers from the sidelines. A floating staff drifts through the air ahead of him. Other students show off their flashy elemental magic. The students nearby whisper as they wait to see what he'll do. Yuseol narrows his eyes, focusing every bit of mana he has left. He steps past another student, his expression focused as he prepares to move. Some punk student starts getting loud, clearly looking for a fight. He screams at Yuseol, who just stands there taking the abuse. Yuseol sighs, already bored with the guy's antics. The system identifies the loudmouth as Uslek Chechbalin, a low-tier bully. Uslek keeps barking orders, thinking he's actually intimidating. He points a finger, demanding Yuseol show some respect to his superiors. A sleek, high-grade staff floats in the air, humming with power. Yuseol stays calm, his eyes fixed on the task at hand. The other elite students watch from the sidelines, curious about the commoner. Hong Bayin prepares her magic, her red eyes glowing with intensity. Yuseol focuses, sensing the shift in mana as the training session peaks. Uslek's face twists in frustration as things don't go his way. He decides to charge, hoping to settle this with brute force. He channels his magic, a cocky smirk spreading across his face. Mana sparks around his hand as he prepares to unleash a spell. A massive explosion of light fills the training hall. Yuseol adjusts his collar, completely untouched by the blast. Uslek is sent flying, crashing onto the hard floor. He groans in pain, unable to believe he was defeated so easily. Yuseol walks away without a second glance, leaving the class in stunned silence. From the shadows, Hong Bayin watches him with a newfound interest. Another student steps up, looking much more capable than the last one. The rest of the class can't stop whispering about Yuseol's strange speed. Bayin grips her staff, her expression hardening as she watches the commoner. Her hand tightens around the weapon, mana beginning to swirl. She unleashes her power, a brilliant light radiating from her form. She looks back with a smug grin, confident in her own superiority. Students murmur about the new guy who somehow managed to grab a high-class staff. Yuseol looks around, sensing someone's eyes on him. He spots a girl with long hair watching him from a distance. She holds her staff with a grace that sets her apart from the others. This is Aether World, a girl carrying the weight of her family's downfall. Yuseol remembers her role in the game, a tragic heroine he needs to help. She starts to walk away, looking lonely amidst the crowd. A blue staff floats silently behind her, glowing with a soft light. She pauses, looking over her shoulder as if she felt something. Yuseol's eyes widen as he realizes something about her magic. She looks out at the training grounds, her mind clearly elsewhere. Yuseol activates his skill, mana wrapping around him like a golden shroud. Aether keeps walking, unaware of the blur of motion behind her. She suddenly senses a presence and turns around in shock. Yuseol is already standing right there, giving her a friendly wave. Aether Wolf turns her head, a look of mild surprise on her face. Baek Yuseol reaches out to her as she starts to walk away. She stops, looking back at him with a puzzled expression. Earlier, Aether was chatting with her classmates, trying to blend in despite her family's fall, but the whispers of the other students always seemed to follow her. Yuseol catches up to her, his expression uncharacteristically serious. One of the noble girls shouts in indignation, her red eyes flashing with anger. Yuseol ignores the commotion, his focus entirely on the girl beside him. In the center of the training grounds, a mysterious blue staff hums with a faint, crystalline light. Yuseol's attention is suddenly drawn to the strange sound coming from the weapon. His fingers brush against the cold surface of the staff, and a spark of mana ignites. He grips the staff firmly, feeling a surge of power that he shouldn't be able to hold. For a moment, his eyes glow with the same blue light as the crystal. The weight of the staff feels right in his hand, as if it were waiting for him. Aether watches him, her breath catching as she senses the shift in the air. As evening falls over Stella Academy, the self-study hall stands quiet and imposing. Aether walks through the empty corridors, her books clutched tightly to her chest. She can't stop thinking about the way Yuseol held that staff, like he knew exactly what it was. Yuseol, meanwhile, looks at the weapon with a knowing smirk, aware of the advantage he's gained. Aether pauses to tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear, her mind still racing. She joins the crowd of students heading to their next lecture, feeling more alone than ever. Her friend laughs, teasing her for always being so studious even when there's nothing to do. Aether gives a small wave as they part ways, the fake smile fading quickly. She walks down the stairs, the weight of her family's expectations heavy on her shoulders. She leans against the cold stone wall, closing her eyes for just a second of peace. A wave of exhaustion washes over her, the stress of her situation finally taking its toll. Suddenly, a tall boy with pale hair approaches her, his gaze cool and observant. He stands before her, his presence commanding and silent. His blue eyes seem to see right through her carefully constructed facade. He says something in a low voice, his expression softening just a fraction. Aether looks up at him, her own eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity. From the shadows, a girl with red hair watches them, her expression unreadable. The sign for the library hangs above them, a quiet witness to their meeting. Inside, Aether stands amidst the towering shelves, searching for answers she might never find. Images of her past flash before her eyes, a time when her family was still whole and powerful. She climbs the wooden stairs, determined to find a way to restore her house's glory. In the classroom, the professor drones on about the theory of mana circulation. Aether keeps her head down, her notes forgotten as she stares at the desk. Across the room, Yuseol leans back in his chair, a mischievous glint in his eyes. He watches Aether, thinking to himself that their meeting was definitely no coincidence. He slams his hand onto the table, the sudden noise startling the students around him. He stands up, his jaw set as he prepares to take the next step in his plan. Aether Wolf looks completely stressed out, her face beaded with sweat as she watches the front of the class. Baek Yuseol is just staring off into space with a bored expression, while the guy next to him, Ma Yuseong, looks like he's having the time of his life. They're sitting in a grand lecture hall, surrounded by students who all seem a lot more focused than Baek is. Up at the podium, their instructor is getting ready to kick off the lesson. Hong Bayin watches with a sharp, calculating gaze, her silver hair catching the light. Baek doesn't seem to care at all, just blinking slowly as the teacher starts talking. The instructor flashes a smug grin, clearly confident in whatever complex magic he's about to explain. He turns to the board and starts scribbling down a mess of magical formulas. Baek rests his head on his hand, looking completely unimpressed by the supposedly difficult material. He gives a small, knowing smirk, as if he's already spotted a dozen mistakes on that board. The teacher pauses, holding his chalk midair as he looks back at the class with a confused expression. Whispers start breaking out among the students as they realize something is off. The instructor starts sweating buckets, staring at his own work like it's written in a language he doesn't understand. Baek's eyes go wide, but he doesn't look surprised. He looks like he's watching a train wreck in slow motion. With a loud crack, the piece of chalk snaps in the teacher's hand. Baek blinks, the sudden noise finally snapping him out of his daze. The instructor whirls around, his face red with frustration as he starts barking at the class. Ma Yuseong doesn't even try to hide his amusement, giving Baek a big thumbs up. Baek stands up and starts heading down the stairs toward the front of the room. He walks past the other students, his calm demeanor a sharp contrast to the chaotic energy in the room. He stops right next to the instructor, looking completely unbothered by the guy's glares. Baek pulls out a pair of glasses and slides them on, his eyes sharpening as he focuses on the board. He sees a vision of a legendary mage, realizing exactly where the teacher's logic went wrong. He leans in close, inspecting the formulas with the intensity of someone who's done this 1,000 times. The instructor starts backpedaling, looking completely overwhelmed by the student's scrutiny. He clenches his teeth, clearly panicking as he realizes he's made a serious mistake. Baek stands there perfectly calm, letting the tension build for a moment before he speaks. The teacher finally snaps and starts shouting, his composure finally breaking in front of the whole class. Ignoring the outburst, Baek picks up a piece of chalk and starts correcting the formulas, wondering if he just destroyed the guy's confidence. Acel can only watch in stunned silence as the trash student effortlessly takes over the lesson. Another student looks on, her mouth slightly open in shock at the display of pure genius. Acel is completely captivated, her eyes glued to Baek as he finishes his work. As the sun sets over the academy towers, the news of what happened in that classroom is bound to spread fast. Later on, Ma Yuseong waves goodbye to Baek, still laughing about the whole situation. Baek sighs and looks down at his hand, the adrenaline finally starting to fade. He starts walking down the quiet hallway alone, lost in his own thoughts. He stops when he sees Hong Bayin waiting for him by a pillar. She keeps her gaze low, her long silver hair framing her face as she waits for him to approach. Baek keeps walking toward her, his expression neutral. He looks her straight in the eye, curious about what the academy's top student wants with him. Hong Bayin steps forward, her posture as rigid and formal as ever. She stops right in front of him and asks what his deal is. Hong Bayin looks him dead in the eye, her red gaze practically burning a hole through him. Baek Yuseol just starts walking away, not really in the mood for a confrontation right now. They end up in the academy library, surrounded by rows of old, leather-bound books and the warm glow of magical lamps. They take a seat at one of the heavy wooden tables to talk things through. Baek pulls out a sheet of paper and starts looking it over, clearly unimpressed by what he's seeing. Bayin watches him, her expression a mix of curiosity and annoyance as she waits for his verdict. He points out a few things on the paper, his voice flat and clinical. From above, the two of them look like they're in the middle of a high-stakes negotiation. He taps the paper with his finger, highlighting a specific flaw in her magical theory. A bead of sweat rolls down Baek's face as he realizes just how deep her misconceptions go. He leans forward, trying to explain that magic isn't just about following the rules, it's about how you use them. Bayin listens with a skeptical look, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She looks genuinely surprised when he tells her that her approach is too rigid. In her mind, she's always played by the book, using magic exactly the way she was taught. She remembers the hours of grueling practice, always striving for perfection in every spell. Baek looks at her with a hint of pity, knowing that her talent is being held back by her own discipline. They lock eyes for a long moment, the silence between them growing heavy. He holds up a finger, ready to drop a truth bomb that she might not be ready for. He gives her a confident, almost cocky smile, clearly enjoying being the one in control for once. Bayin's face turns beet red as she fumes, her frustration finally boiling over. She looks away, her shoulders slumping as she realizes he might actually be right. She grips her skirt in her lap, her knuckles turning white from the strain. A dark, gloomy aura seems to surround her as she sinks deeper into her seat. Baek leans his head on his hand, looking like a pro gamer who just won a match without even breaking a sweat. Outside, the academy towers stand tall against the darkening sky as night falls over the campus. Later that night, Baek walks through the quiet streets, his mind still working overtime. He looks pretty exhausted, the events of the day finally starting to catch up with him. Suddenly, he's hit with a wave of memories from his past lives, all his old mistakes flashing before his eyes. He shakes it off, focusing back on the present and the girl he just left in the library. He thinks about Bayin's rigid way of thinking and how it's going to be her undoing if she doesn't change. He continues his stroll through the town, passing by a few late-night shops and empty alleys. He keeps walking away into the night, disappearing around the corner. He eventually finds himself in another dusty corner of the library, where the bookshelves are covered in old spiderwebs. He stands in front of a shelf, looking for a very specific book he remembers from the game. He notices a hooded figure sitting nearby, but they're so still they might as well be part of the furniture. He imagines the glowing form of a legendary mage holding the very book he's looking for. Baek scans the spines of the books, his eyes moving quickly as he searches for the right title. His eyes light up as he spots a familiar binding tucked away in a dark corner. There it is, the book that holds the key to his next move. As he reaches out to grab it, he notices another hand moving toward the same book. He looks over in surprise, not expecting anyone else to be interested in this old relic. Standing right next to him is Aether World, her pale blue hair and gentle expression a sharp contrast to the dusty surroundings. Baek Yuseol looks at Aether World, wondering what brings her to this isolated corner of the library. She quietly picks out a book and starts to walk away, her long, pale hair trailing behind her. Baek turns his attention back to the shelves, looking for something that catches his eye. He pulls a heavy volume from the stack, hoping it contains the information he needs. Nearby, Aether is still browsing, her fingers grazing the spines of ancient texts. Baek watches her reach for another book, noticing how serious she seems about her research. The archive is still and silent, filled with the scent of old paper and the weight of history. Aether looks down at her book, a flicker of sadness crossing her delicate features. Baek reflects on the lore of this world, remembering a tragic figure supposedly killed by dark demonic humans. He recalls that in the original story, Aether was destined to die even before Flame became the protagonist. Knowing her fate makes him want to reach out and perhaps change the course of history. He places a stack of books on the table with a determined grunt, catching her attention. He gives her a cheerful smile, trying to dispel the heavy atmosphere between them. The two share a brief, quiet exchange as they stand among the dusty archives. On the table lies a book with an illustration of a legendary knight facing a great beast. Baek prepares to leave, feeling satisfied with the knowledge he's gained. Aether watches him go, her expression a mix of curiosity and confusion. She remains behind, standing amidst the towering bookshelves and shadows. Baek smiles to himself, thinking that with these books, he won't have any issues this semester. Aether makes her way through the academy, clutching her chosen book tightly. Later, she enters the large lecture hall, which is already buzzing with the chatter of students. She takes a seat, looking a little out of place among the more boisterous students. Baek is also on his way to class, moving through the hallways with a sense of purpose. Aether looks up as people pass by, her mind still preoccupied with her studies. She opens her notebook, ready to record the professor's every word. Baek adjusts a pair of glasses on his nose, looking every bit the diligent student. Professor Laydin stands at the front of the room, ready to begin the lecture on Divine Moon Studies. The classroom is filled with students, all eager to learn about the complexities of magic. A student firmly places their hand on a thick textbook, settling in for the lesson. Baek pushes his glasses up with a sharp, confident gesture that leaves Aether looking startled. She stares at him, her purple eyes wide with a mix of surprise and intrigue. Baek ignores the attention, focusing entirely on the professor at the podium. Professor Laydin is a renowned expert in his field, and his lectures are known for being incredibly detailed. He begins by talking about the ancient elves and their profound connection to natural magic. Next, he describes the dwarves and their mastery over the magic of matter and elements. Both Baek and Aether listen intently, though they both have very different reasons for being here. Baek's mind is racing as he tries to connect the professor's words to what he knows from the game. Laydin stands by his desk, which is piled high with ancient scrolls and magical tools. As he speaks, a vision of a mysterious hooded figure in blue appears in the background of the classroom. The lecture shifts toward the nature of eternal flames and their significance in magical theory. The professor describes a dark, octopus-like entity from ancient myths, stating that its flames never died out. With a wand in hand, Professor Laydin points to the chalkboard, emphasizing the importance of this forgotten lore. Baek Yuseol adjusts his glasses as he listens to the lecture, his mind momentarily wandering back to his former life. He thinks about Aether World, the game that completely consumed his existence before he was brought into this reality. He vividly remembers the countless hours spent at his desk, his eyes glued to the screen as he mastered every difficult level. Back in the classroom, Baek sits with his arms crossed, reflecting on how much his life has changed since those days. He realizes that his survival in this world depends on more than just his knowledge of the game's hidden mechanics. A memory of a training dummy engulfed in a massive pillar of fire flashes before his eyes, a reminder of the power he's up against. Strength isn't all there is, a sharp voice rings out, belonging to a woman who commands the attention of everyone on the field. This is Professor Hong Yil, the head of the fire class, whose striking silver hair and red eyes match her intense personality. She walks across the training grounds with an air of absolute authority, leaving a trail of smoke and awe in her wake. She had just demonstrated her prowess by unleashing a targeted blast of fire that completely overwhelmed the training dummy. The resulting explosion was a violent burst of heat and light, showcasing the destructive potential of high-level magic. Despite the chaos she just unleashed, Professor Hong Yil remains perfectly composed, her expression cold and unreadable. The students look on in stunned silence, the sheer magnitude of her power leaving a lasting impression on them all. As she turns to leave, her form begins to disappear into the swirling smoke, the finality of her demonstration lingering in the air. Hong Bayin sits alone in the quiet hallway of the academy, lost in her own thoughts. She clenches her hands in her lap, her silver hair falling softly over her shoulders. Her crimson eyes narrow as she looks up, sensing someone's presence. Flame, a girl with vibrant red hair, greets her with a bright and cheerful smile. She takes a seat on the bench right next to the silver-haired girl, ignoring her cold vibe. Flame is doing all the talking while Bayin just sits there looking completely disinterested. Laughing, Flame exclaims how super cool something was, trying her best to get a reaction. She teases the fire prodigy, who actually looks a little bit taken aback for once. To show off her power, Bayin summons a massive magic circle that fills the air with fire. She eventually gets up to leave, her long silver hair trailing behind her as she walks away. Bayin heads down the long hallway alone, her expression returning to its usual stern mask. She stops at a large wooden door, hesitating for just a moment before she goes inside. Looking back over her shoulder, she seems to be checking if anyone followed her. Inside the room, a woman in a formal academy uniform is waiting to speak with her. The woman has a serious look on her face as she addresses the young noble. Bayin takes a seat and listens intently as they discuss some high-stakes news. She suddenly covers her mouth in shock, her eyes widening at what she's just heard. The woman continues to speak calmly, while Bayin looks increasingly distressed. She jumps up from her seat, her voice full of disbelief as she asks about a high-class situation. She rubs her forehead, trying to process the news about this mysterious new student. Outside, the sun shines brightly over the academy grounds on a clear morning. Inside the classroom, Professor Carlium is mid-lecture on mana orbitology. He points to a complex magic circle on the chalkboard, explaining the theory behind it. Baek Yuseol is slumped in his seat, barely able to keep his eyes open as he yawns. He snaps awake as he realizes the professor caught him slacking off in class. Called to the front, he starts solving the impossible formula with absolute confidence. Carlium is left absolutely speechless as the trash student finishes the magic circle effortlessly. Baek just waves a hand dismissively, acting like it's no big deal as he walks away. Acel Wolf, the girl with pale blue hair, watches him from her desk with a suspicious gaze. After the lecture is over, the students gather their things and start to leave the room. Baek stops in the doorway, sensing that someone is watching him from behind. He turns around to find Acel standing right there, staring him down with her book in hand. The two of them stand in a tense silence for a moment, just looking at each other. Acel looks flustered, her face starting to turn red as she tries to find her words. She suddenly blurts out that he's gross, looking super annoyed as she turns away. The boy just scratches his head, looking completely confused by her sudden reaction. She starts questioning him, clearly suspicious of how he solved that problem so easily. He doesn't seem interested in explaining himself and simply turns to walk away. He heads down the hallway without a second glance, ignoring her completely. Determined to get some answers, Acel starts following him through the corridor. Baek stops and looks back over his shoulder, noticing her persistence. He gestures for her to follow him, leading the way toward whatever he's planning next. Baek and Acel stand in the hallway, the atmosphere between them having shifted completely. She can't help but giggle behind her hand, clearly finding something about him amusing. He just rubs his head, looking totally exhausted by her sudden change in attitude. He looks down, his sharp eyes full of a focus that most students at Stella would never understand. Deep down, he knows the game mechanics. A character like Flame is designed to build a bond with the hero. He starts walking away, with the system reminding him of his status as the male protagonist of this world. He gives a quick wave over his shoulder, acting like he's already over the conversation. Acel stands there, her face flushing as she watches him go, her books clutched tightly to her chest. She catches up to him, her expression a mix of nervousness and genuine curiosity about who he really is. In another realm, or maybe just a memory, a powerful mage casts massive circles of light into the sky. Baek doesn't stop, keeping his pace steady as the girl follows him down the corridor. She eventually stops and gives him a respectful bow as he moves on, acknowledging his strange authority. He stands alone for a moment, looking at the familiar but different surroundings of the academy. But a dark thought lingers. In the original game story, Acel is destined for a tragic, early end. He clenches his hand, his eyes hardening as he resolves to change that fate no matter what. To save her, he needs power, the kind of power that comes from a magic revelation delay physique. He heads back toward his room, his mind already calculating the next steps of his training. Walking through the quiet hallways, he knows he's the only one who can fix this broken world. Back in his room, he sits cross-legged on the floor, entering a deep state of meditation. He closes his eyes, focusing every bit of his will on the mana flowing through his body. Every breath is deliberate as he tries to force his dormant power to finally awaken. In his mind, he sees himself standing tall, a glowing sword of light held firmly in his hand. He isn't just a student, he's the world's only pinnacle swordmaster, a genius in a body that's failing him. A golden aura begins to radiate from his body as he finally breaks through his limits. On the wall, the clock ticks away the seconds of his transformation. He sits perfectly still, the light around him intensifying as his mana begins to stabilize. His eyes snap open, glowing with a newfound power that pierces through the darkness of the room. He looks at his hands, a wide smile spreading across his face as he feels the change. Small sparks of golden energy dance between his fingers, proving that his training is working. System windows pop up in front of him, announcing that both his blink skill and his syndrome have leveled up. He clenches his fist, a look of pure confidence in his eyes as he realizes he's finally getting stronger. The next day, the academy's training grounds are vibrant and green under the morning sun. Acel is already out there with the other students, her gaze fixed on the horizon as if waiting for something. Stella Academy stands tall under the starry night sky, a massive dome of magic and history. The upcoming sports events and school festivals aren't just games, they're life and death for the characters involved. Groups of students are already gathering on the grass, the air buzzing with excitement and nervous energy. Aether walks among them, her mind clearly elsewhere as she ignores the chatter of her classmates. She stands alone for a moment, her dark hair caught in the wind as a soft light surrounds her. Her side profile shows a look of quiet determination, her eyes reflecting the heavy burden of her future. She can't help but wonder, where did a person like Baek Yuseol actually come from? She clenches the front of her uniform, her heart pounding as she thinks about his strange, knowing eyes. Taking a deep breath, she starts walking across the field, her mind made up about what she needs to do next. The Academy's original hero, the one meant to be the protagonist of this world, stands confidently surrounded by his admirers. He flashes a radiant, picture-perfect smile that seems to bloom with flowers, effortlessly charming everyone in his presence. Watching from a distance, Aether doesn't join the crowd, her mind occupied by the strange encounter with Baek Yuseol. Every expression on his face is refined and practiced, the look of someone born to be the center of attention. In the original game's lore, this is the boy destined to rise to the top and claim the ultimate throne of power. He waves cheerfully to his fellow students, perfectly playing the role of the golden boy of Stella Academy. He continues to laugh and joke with his circle, the life of every social event on the training grounds. Aether turns away, uninterested in the popular boy's antics as she prepares for the serious business of the trial. Suddenly, a stern instructor in a long black trench coat steps onto the field, his silent presence immediately silencing the students. Nearby, a mimic monster disguised as a chest is defeated, its glowing blue fragments yielding 8 points for the team. The instructor watches with a critical gaze, noting the students' every movement as they progress through the mock battle. Without warning, a surge of blue mana ripples across the grass, indicating that the training scenario is about to get much more intense. What? Several students shout in panic as the peaceful field is suddenly overtaken by a dark, surging power. Massive, thorn vines burst from the earth with a deafening shriek, lashing out at anyone within reach. Izel's eyes go wide as she realizes that this isn't just a simple test anymore, something has gone terribly wrong. She quickly retreats into the forest area of the training grounds, trying to put some distance between herself and the vines. The other students are scattered and confused, their voices echoing through the woods as they try to regroup. She pauses by a massive root, looking back at the chaos with a mix of fear and determination in her eyes. Sensing a presence behind her, she spins around and raises her white staff, its head glowing with a faint light. But it's not a monster, it's another student with bright orange hair and freckles who seems oddly relaxed given the situation. That's right, the girl, Flame, asks with a knowing smirk, her calm demeanor standing in stark contrast to the disaster. Flame stands her ground with her own staff, watching the vines with the look of someone who has seen far worse. A sudden explosion of blue mana drenching the area signals a massive shift in the magical field. Aether finds herself standing in a pool of glowing energy, the training ground's power beginning to manifest physically. Towering green roots erupt from the soil around her, creating a claustrophobic cage of living, twisting wood. She centers herself and begins to chant, her staff drawing blue magic circles in the air to form a protective barrier. She looks up at the massive vines looming over her, her resolve hardening even as the ground continues to tremble. On the forest floor, the overflowing mana starts to calm, pooling into glowing puddles amidst the scattered leaves. Deep within a tunnel of thick roots, a brilliant light shines through, and a mysterious figure begins to emerge. It's a boy, his silhouette radiant with a golden power that seems to push back the dark corruption of the woods. Aether stares in shock as the figure comes closer, her hand gripping her staff as she realizes who it might be. She looks down, her thoughts a whirlwind of confusion as she tries to understand why he would be here. The silhouette of the boy stands tall near the trees, his presence casting a long shadow toward the frightened girl. Meanwhile, another student with brown hair looks around in confusion, seemingly oblivious to the incredible power nearby. Aether hides behind a large tree, her eyes fixed on the mysterious boy as she wonders what he plans to do. In his hand, he holds what looks like a simple wooden stick, yet it radiates an aura of immense hidden strength. She clenches her staff so hard her hand shakes, her breath coming in quick, nervous gasps as the tension reaches its peak. The brown-haired boy continues to walk past, still unaware that he's being watched from the shadows. Finally, Aether can't stay hidden any longer and unleashes her magic, her staff erupting in a blinding, golden glow. The world around her becomes a blur of motion and light as she focuses every bit of her mana into a single point. With a surge of true power, she casts a massive spell, a golden magic circle expanding beneath her feet. A colossal beam of light magic blasts forward from her staff, tearing through the vines and lighting up the entire forest. Baek Yuseol turns around, sensing the immense surge of power that has just been released by Aether. He watches with a calm, analytical gaze as the light magic begins to fade, leaving a path of destruction in its wake. The golden energy dissipates into the air, revealing the cleared forest and the now silent vine monsters. Aether stands frozen in place, her mouth hanging open in shock at the sheer scale of the power she just unleashed. She stares at the empty space where the monsters once were, her staff still trembling in her hand as the last remnants of magic flicker away. Meanwhile, the original hero of the academy leaps through the trees, his own gold-tinted mana flaring as he hunts for his next target. Baek looks toward the distant silhouette of the hero, a shadow of concern crossing his face face as he contemplates the diverging paths of their fates. A blue holographic screen flickers into existence before him, displaying a new notification from the system. He brushes the screen aside and continues walking through the forest, his mind already calculating his next move in this dangerous game. The system reveals his reward, etheric roots, a rare item that pulses with a strange, otherworldly blue light. He pauses, his expression neutral as he realizes the significance of the item he's just obtained for his future growth. In the distance, the other students look on with envy and suspicion, whispering about the mysterious commoner who seems to know too much. Baek Yuseol simply stares ahead, his eyes filled with a quiet determination as he prepares to face whatever challenges the academy throws at him next. Baek Yuseol stands alone in the woods, cornered by a group of students who clearly think they've got the upper hand. He doesn't look worried at all, just staring them down with a bored expression. The leader of the pack steps forward with a smug grin, already celebrating a win he hasn't earned yet. Baek eyes them up, realizing these guys are just the bottom-tier lackeys of some noble clique. He reaches for his weapon, but it's just a golden point stick, basically a fancy pointer for lectures. The guys on the other side don't even know how to react to that. The blonde leader starts laughing, thinking this is some kind of joke. Baek stays silent, his eyes fixed on his targets. The leader points his wand, ready to put the trash student in his place. Baek looks at the stick in his hand, prepping his only real skill. They keep mocking him, completely unaware of what's coming. For anyone else, this stick is a toy, but for him, it's all he needs. The standoff drags on for a second as the tension in the forest builds. Baek levels the stick at them, signaling the start of the lesson. In a flash of light, he blinks right past the leader, leaving him swinging at thin air. The blonde guy's smug face vanishes, replaced by pure shock as he realizes his target is gone. Baek gives a little smirk, enjoying the confusion he's causing. He blinks again, moving with a speed that shouldn't be possible for someone with his stats. The leader's eyes widen as he realizes he can't even track Baek's movements. He tries to lash out wildly, but he's just hitting shadows. He lets out a scream of rage, completely losing his cool. Baek appears a few yards away, casually landing on a rock like he's just out for a stroll. The leader spins around, desperately trying to find where he went this time. Baek just smiles, tapping the point stick against his palm. The group tries to close in again, but Baek just shrugs them off with a flat, "Don't wanna." He looks at them like they're a minor inconvenience. To them, it's just a point stick, but in his hands, it's a high-tier weapon. He grips the stick tight, ready to actually get serious. The leader charges in one last time, screaming at the top of his lungs. A massive shockwave hits, sending the whole group stumbling back. The blonde guy can't believe he's being pushed around by a guy with a stick. Baek turns into a blur, weaving through the group before they can even react. He launches himself into the air, using another blink to gain high ground. The other students try to blast him with ice magic. He dodges mid-air, the blue mana trails showing just how perfect his timing is. He's moving so fast the eye can barely keep up with the golden streaks. The goons are spinning in circles now, totally lost. "He's too fast, I can't find him," one of them yells. They're panicking, checking every shadow while Baek stays one step ahead. Then, without a sound, he appears right behind the leader again. A single strike from the stick connects, shattering whatever defense they thought they had. He catches the leader with a follow-up, sending him reeling. The point stick crackles with energy, showing that Baek isn't just fast, he's dangerous. Baek Yuseol lets loose a final surge of mana through that simple point stick. A massive shockwave of blue energy rips through the clearing, catching the whole group off guard. They're left groaning on the ground while Baek casually steps up onto a ledge, looking down at the mess he made. The leader and his buddies are totally wrecked, unable to believe they just got handled. Baek holds up a handful of his secret weapons, just a few more of those golden point sticks. He flashes a huge, goofy grin and a peace sign, looking way too proud of himself for a guy who just used classroom supplies to win a fight. He keeps chirping at them, clearly enjoying the victory way too much. The blonde guy can barely sputter out a word as he trembles in the dirt. But they aren't alone. Aether Wolf is watching the whole thing from behind the trees, her expression unreadable. Baek starts wandering off into the woods, thinking he's really hit the jackpot today. He glances back for a second, feeling like something's up. Around the corner, Hong Bayin looks completely stunned by whatever she just witnessed. Suddenly, the forest lights up as a massive burst of flame erupts right where Baek was standing. The fire spreads in a violent wave, incinerating everything in its path. Baek barely manages to scramble away, panting as he realizes how close that was. The ground is scorched, leaving a smoking trail through the undergrowth. Through the haze, a lone figure with a staff starts walking toward him. High-heeled boots click against the dirt as Baek snaps his attention to the newcomer. It's Aether Wolf, looking every bit the high-ranking mage with her staff and those piercing red eyes. She doesn't say a word, just keeps closing the distance. They stand face to face, the tension between them thicker than the smoke from the fire. Aether gives him a look that says she's seen through his little act. Without a word of explanation, she turns around and starts walking away. Baek yells after her, totally confused by the cold shoulder. "Hey, where do you think you're going?" He starts running, trying to keep up with her as she disappears into the foliage. Aether stays ahead, glancing back with a look of intense focus. Baek grips his stick tighter, sensing that the real challenge is just starting. He stops in his tracks, feeling the air shift around him again. Another blast of mana hits nearby, but this time it's directed at more of those school bullies. From the shadows, Aether watches the fallout, her eyes fixed on the chaos. She steps into the light, a burning magic circle forming at her feet. Fire spells bloom around her like deadly flowers, lighting up the dark woods. Baek has to throw himself backward as a wall of flames comes roaring toward him. He's forced to use his blink just to stay in one piece, flipping through the air to avoid the heat. A fireball hits a tree right next to him, turning it into a torch instantly. He skids to a halt, eyes wide as he realizes he's in the middle of a literal firestorm. Iseul's gaze is locked on him, cold and calculated despite the inferno. Baek stands his ground, the flames licking at his heels. Aether stands at the center of the ring of fire, looking like she's in total control of the elements. She finally speaks, her voice cutting through the crackle of the flames. She demands to know why he's only using the basic staff they were given at the start. Her red eyes search his, looking for an answer to the puzzle that is Baek Yuseol. Baek Yuseol stands his ground, the heat from the inferno baking the air around him. Aether Wolf stands at the heart of the flames, her staff glowing with an ominous light as Baek watches with a bead of sweat on his face. She looks like a goddess of fire, her presence alone warping the air as she prepares her next move. Her eyes flare with a cold intensity, a sharp contrast to the raging heat surrounding them. The entire forest seems to be caught in her spell, a terrifying display of raw power. Suddenly, a massive shockwave of mana erupts, the sheer force of it threatening to blow everything away. Baek grit his teeth, refusing to be intimidated by the scale of the magic. He stays low, moving like a shadow through the flickering tongues of flame. His eyes are locked on his target, searching for the slightest opening in her defense. Another violent explosion of fire tears through the trees, a roar that drowns out everything else. Baek throws himself into the air, narrowly avoiding a direct hit from a column of magma-like mana. He doesn't stop, pushing his body to the limit as he weaves through the burning undergrowth. Something changes in the atmosphere, catching him off guard for a split second. A blinding beam of light shoots upward, a signal of even greater power being unleashed. He lands in a clearing, the smoke from the fire clinging to his clothes as he looks for his opponent. He's breathing hard, but his focus hasn't wavered for a second. Aether is still there, unmoved and untouched by the chaos she's created. It's clear now, she's on a completely different level than any opponent he's faced so far. She doesn't give him any room to breathe, her gaze pinning him in place. With a sharp movement of her staff, she whips the surrounding flames into a frenzy. Dozens of fire arrows materialize in the air, all pointed directly at his chest. Baek reaches for his golden sticks, his fingers tightening around the familiar wood. He takes a deep breath, steadying his heart as the world seems to slow down. The fire arrows launch with a deafening boom, a rain of destruction headed his way. Baek is a blur of motion, dashing through the gaps in her barrage with impossible speed. His eyes start to glow with a faint blue light, the world around him turning into a map of trajectories. I see it, he thinks, finally spotting the path through her impenetrable defense. He becomes a streak of blue mana, slicing through the air like a lightning bolt. He parries the fire spells with his sticks, the golden wood crackling as it meets the magical heat. For the first time, a look of genuine shock crosses Iseul's face. She can't believe it. No one should be able to move through her grand blaze like this. Baek is closing the distance fast, his sticks glowing brighter with every step. He dances through a web of searing light, his movements more like a refined art than a desperate struggle. He's right on her now, the heat from her staff almost close enough to singe his eyebrows. Iseul's composure starts to crumble as she realizes her spells aren't hitting their mark. She brings her staff up in a defensive stance, desperately trying to put distance between them. Baek slashes through her final protective layer of mana, the air ringing with the sound of breaking glass. He ducks under a massive flaming branch that falls between them, not losing his momentum for a second. Another wall of fire rises to block his path, but he's already predicted the move. His feet find purchase on the scorched earth, ready for the final lunge. With a roar of determination, he charges headlong into the final corridor of flames. They clash in a brilliant explosion of blue and gold mana, the very ground beneath them trembling from the impact. Hong Bayin's crimson eyes widen in sheer disbelief as Baek Yuseol continues his impossible charge. She stands centered in her complex red magic circle, her staff held defensively while Baek closes the final few inches of the gap between them. With a sudden, violent burst of light, Baek strikes, his simple wooden stick colliding with the shimmering edge of her defensive mana. The impact triggers a massive explosion of white and blue mana, a blinding flash that completely obscures the clearing. Hong Bayin is forced back, her staff trembling as she desperately tries to hold off Baek's overwhelming physical pressure amidst the sparks. She grits her teeth, the sheer power and speed of his assault finally shattering the composure of the proud noble. As the light from the mana clash fades, Baek Yuseol stands tall, his silhouette looming over the defeated girl. He crouches down next to Hong Bayin, who sits on the grass with her staff resting uselessly beside her, the fire and magic finally extinguished. She looks up at him, her face flushed with a mixture of exhaustion and a sudden, unexpected embarrassment at being bested so thoroughly. What else? Just a normal student, Baek says casually, answering her earlier demand as he stands up to leave. He walks away with his hands in his pockets, leaving a stunned Hong Bayin behind, unaware that another person is watching from behind the trees. From the dense shadows of the forest, a girl with long hair tied with a large dark bow watches him with an intense, curious gaze. This is Aether Wolf, and she has seen every second of his impossible victory. Baek Yuseol looks pretty startled. Flame just asked him a very dangerous question. She wants to know if he's a possessor, too. They stand in the middle of the forest, the air between them totally frozen. Baek tries to play it off with a nervous laugh, gesturing at his sticks like he's just a normal student. A bead of sweat rolls down his face. He's definitely feeling the heat. Flame just stares him down, her expression unreadable. He maintains the poker face, but inside, he's probably screaming. He gives her a dismissive wave and tries to walk away. He thinks he's in the clear, but the girl behind him hasn't moved an inch. Flame's red eyes narrow. She's not letting him off that easily. Thwack. Something hits him square in the back of the head. His sticks go flying as he stumbles forward. Baek rubs his head, looking totally confused by the sudden assault. Flame just shrugs and tells him he won, so he should take the loot. He reaches down to gather the sticks off the forest floor. Score. He's looking pretty pleased with himself now that he's got the points. He waves goodbye, making a quick exit before she changes her mind. Acel Wolf watches him go, standing right next to the girl who just handed over her win. Flame's eyes linger on him for a second. She knows something is up. Meanwhile, the big shots at the academy are watching everything through a magical monitor. Ma Yuseong is on screen, looking like a total pro as he handles his business. Elder Telex is taking it all in with a serious look. He chuckles to himself, thinking about how much more impressive he was at that age. The other elders stand around, evaluating the new batch of talent. They shift their focus back to the screen as the battle heats up. Ma Yuseong is facing off against another top-tier student in the forest. It's a high-level duel, and neither side is backing down. Yuseong lunges forward with his sword, ice magic flaring around him. His opponent barely manages to dodge the freezing blast. The ground explodes as the ice magic connects. Another student leaps into the air, summoning multiple magic circles to stay mobile. He glides through the sky, dodging incoming attacks with ease. Elder Telex keeps a close eye on the feed. He discusses the results with the other staff members. On the screen, two powerful magic types clash, creating a storm of energy. It's a battle between Flame's fire and Ma Yuseong's ice. But then, something massive shadows the battlefield. A giant bird monster lets out a piercing shriek that echoes through the trees. It tucks its wings and dives straight for the students below. Ma Yuseong and Baek both look up, realizing the situation just got real. The monster comes screaming down like a feathered missile. Acel watches from a distance, her eyes wide with shock. This definitely wasn't in the lesson plan. Headmaster Eltwin watches the students from the shadows. Out on the field, the test is reaching its peak. Acel Wolf stares ahead, her expression unreadable. The conversation turns to the Adalabit princess, the rising star of the academy. Elder Telex seems deep in thought as he watches the screen. Baek Yuseol is on the move, dodging with practiced ease. The scene shifts to bloodied notes, reminders of the danger they're in. The text warns that this magic is completely impossible to tame. Baek doesn't seem to care, pushing through the chaos. He strikes with a burst of fiery energy. The academy grounds look peaceful, but the mock battle is anything but. A green flash signals the end of another round. Ma Yuseong effortlessly dismantles a training dummy. He looks serious, his mind focused entirely on the duel. He tightens his grip on his weapon. He moves with a grace that most students can only dream of. A giant bird monster looms over the area like a bad omen. Yuseong looks frustrated, clearly pushed to his limit. Baek flashes a knowing smile. For a split second, he looks like a completely different person, a true predator. Yuseong can't help but feel a bit intimidated. Hong Bayin enters the arena, staff in hand and ready for business. Baek barely escapes a powerful whirlwind. Bayin's gaze is fixed on him, sharp and calculating. She unleashes a massive explosion that lights up the sky. Her focus is absolute, her eyes reflecting the dancing flames. A massive wave of fire sweeps across the training grounds. Yuseong watches the display with growing concern. Smoke billows around Bayin as she stands her ground. Magic circles flare to life as she prepares her next spell. The field is rocked by a series of powerful blasts. She pauses to catch her breath, huffing from the effort. She's determined to prove she's the best, no matter the cost. Exhausted, she lets her guard down for just a moment. She leans on her staff, her strength nearly spent. Baek is watching her from the sidelines, looking impressed. The fire slowly dies down, leaving the field scorched. Bayin looks surprised when she sees someone approaching. An attendant brings out a long wooden box. Inside is a sleek, blue magic sword, a masterpiece of craftsmanship. Bayin takes a moment to admire the new addition to her arsenal. With the weapon in hand, she turns and heads back toward the building. Acel Wolf walks through the academy halls, carrying a heavy wooden case. She is stopped by a woman with long purple hair and a regal maroon cloak. The two stand in the courtyard, their conversation likely revolving around recent events. Izel's red eyes narrow as she contemplates the weight of her responsibilities. The instructor watches her with a calm, knowing expression. A memory flashes by, a clash of magic and steel that left a lasting impression. As she walks alone, Acel reflects on the strange boy who recently joined their ranks. She wonders if Baek Yuseol is truly serious about following the path of a knight in an age of magic. The evening sun casts long shadows as she makes her way to the training area. Baek Yuseol is leaning against a wall, casually snacking as if he doesn't have a care in the world. He looks up and sees Acel approaching, her expression as stern as ever. He offers her a lopsided grin, which only seems to make her more flustered. Without a word, she thrusts the wooden case toward him. Baek's eyes widen in surprise as he takes the heavy box. He opens it to reveal a beautifully crafted dagger, its blue crystal blade pulsing with mana. Yay, free money, he jokes, making Iseol's eye twitch with irritation. She glares at him, clearly unimpressed by his lack of decorum. Baek gives a satisfied nod, recognizing the incredible quality of the weapon. Iseol turns away, her cheeks tinged with a slight blush of frustration. She huffs, looking back at him one last time before storming off. Baek watches her go, then focuses his attention back on his new prize. He walks through the stone hallways, the box tucked securely under his arm. A man in black stops him, looking down with a curious expression. The sun sets over the academy, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Baek stands on the practice field, holding the blue dagger and testing its weight. He grips the hilt tightly, feeling the raw magic energy flowing through the weapon. A burst of blue light erupts from the blade as he channels his mana into it. "It's better than I expected," he murmurs, a small smile playing on his lips. He feels the power of the blade, a weapon that feels like it belongs to another world. A vision of a girl surrounded by celestial light flashes in his mind, a hint of the magic he now holds. In another part of the academy, a young woman performs a dazzling display of magic. Baek waves dismissively at a hologram as he continues his training. He looks down at the glowing screen, his amber eyes filled with determination. Standing on the edge of the field, he looks like a lone warrior ready to take on the world. Later, the students gather in the main hall for their next lesson. An instructor stands at the front, calling for silence as he prepares to demonstrate a magic shield. Baek stands among his peers, his expression neutral but his mind sharp. He notices the teacher watching him closely, perhaps sensing the change in him. The instructor gives him a faint, encouraging smile. They walk together, the teacher likely offering a bit of advice to his most unusual student. As they pass a group of other students, the atmosphere suddenly turns cold. A student with long red hair and a predatory grin watches Baek, his blue eyes filled with malice. Baek Yuseol and the red-haired student face off on a large, ornate circular platform within the academy grounds. The red-haired student looks down at Baek with a smug, condescending smirk, confident in his superior magic. In the background, other students watch the confrontation with a mix of anticipation and concern. The red-haired student grips his staff tightly, a fierce determination replacing his smug grin as he prepares to strike. He unleashes a powerful spell, a massive green magic circle forming as he summons jagged earth magic. The surrounding students are pushed back by the sheer force of the magical pressure radiating from the arena. Baek Yuseol remains perfectly calm, his eyes tracking every movement as the green energy surges toward him. Earth spikes erupt from the ground, but Baek stands his ground, his hand resting on the hilt of his weapon. A brilliant green light engulfs the arena as the red-haired student pours his mana into the offensive. With a sudden flash of blue light, Baek draws his weapon, its crystalline blade glowing with intense power. He moves with blurring speed, his silhouette flickering as he begins to weave through the magical barrage. The space around him seems to shatter like glass as he uses Blink to teleport past the incoming spikes. Baek reappears safely on the other side of the attack, looking completely unfazed by the display of force. He offers a slight, mocking smile, further provoking his opponent's mounting frustration. Stunned and enraged, the red-haired student watches as Baek prepares to make his next move. He channels every ounce of his power, summoning a swarm of floating green stones to surround him. He grits his teeth, his expression twisted with a desperate need to crush the trashed student before him. A close-up of his manic grin reveals the depths of his arrogance and hidden insecurity. Balor's stone pierce, he screams, launching a relentless rain of stones at high velocity. Baek Yuseol stares down the attack, his amber eyes glowing with absolute focus as he readies his final counter.